My computer fan is running. Is that my computer fan?
Yes, it is. And we are live. So I am going to do this. I'm going to do... Welcome everybody back to Soccerwise. David Goss and Jordan Angeli with you live if you're watching on YouTube or Twitch, delayed on video if you're watching on YouTube and Twitch, and of course anywhere you get your podcast. We are ready for another big NWSL show. It is the international break, Jordan. Do you feel relaxed? Do you feel ready for a break?
Yes. I am ready for a break. It's been a great start to the NWSL season, but it hits you fast and furious. And I feel like the people working every weekend, all the games, we're ready for a little bit of a break, but also these players are ready for a break and much deserved. So it's nice. So normally in football, we don't get a summer break here in the United States, right?
It's non-existent. Yeah.
Things for me, that mountain adventures, going on hikes, playing a little golf, hanging out with friends and family. You know, I need that right now, so I'm pumped for it.
I am going to Las Vegas for my break, where it will be 177 degrees. My wife is there for work for a very long time, so I'm just going to visit her. Okay. It is the last place I would ever choose to go, but I'm going to try and get a hike in while I am there as well, because people say I'm ridiculous by trying, but like, it's a dry heat, right? As long as I stay out of the sun, I'll be fine.
Yeah, and if you go early in the morning, you should be okay, maybe, possibly. It'll just be like New York City right now. It's hot.
Don't even get me started. Don't even get me started. The U.S. women's national team will learn that in a moment. They are playing in Red Bull Arena in New Jersey, technically, but New York, New Jersey, on Saturday as part of the send-off series, along with a match in D.C. against Costa Rica to get ready for the Olympics. So we will talk all about that coming up in this show. And of course, we will have your reaction and review for that one next week as well. We've got a bunch of breaking news today. How convenient that everyone timed it around our show. Mackenzie Arnold signing with the Portland Thorns. Massive news. Washington signing another attacking piece, because, like, why not continue to juice that attack under Jonathan Heraldez there? We, of course, will break down the massive KC-Orlando game in this show. And Utah Royals have signed a center forward to hopefully juice that attack a little bit more and get them back onto a better page as we go into the break. And then we've got some stuff to debate as well, some stuff to talk. Jordan, I didn't have you last week on the show, so we haven't talked NWSL in 2 weeks now. We've got a lot to get to.
We do, but it was nice for Lori Lindsay to be our pinch hitter, right? I think she did a pretty good job.
A super sub, I would say. Yeah. A strong performance from Lori. Of course, she does a great job. We appreciate her being with us. Giving a little bit of background on the Amy Rodriguez news, as Utah let Amy Rodriguez go, of course, and former teammates with Lori Lindsay. And in watching all the coverage coming out since, I still don't really understand why Amy Rodriguez got fired. I get the results, but like in the last week plus, normally things start to come out and you're like, that's what happened. Doesn't feel like that's the case with this story as we go forward.
Yeah, I feel still confused about what was going on there and the decision making. And, you know, I think since I didn't get to talk about it, I'll just say one thing. I feel like in ways, it didn't feel like the organization helped Amy Rodriguez be successful. They didn't set her up for success. There was plenty of turnover when it came to assistant coaches within weeks, really, of the start of the season. They didn't even have assistant coaches before preseason started. This is a brand new coach who's never coached as a full team, and you don't support her like that. I don't feel like that was I just feel like she was put in between a rock and a hard place, and she did her best to try to instill a culture, and we'll see what turns up with what really happened with this firing. But I would support Amy Rodriguez in this. Great person, awesome player, and we'll see. I'm sure she'll find her way back to head coaching when the time is right.
it feels set up for her to be a home run assistant hiring for another team that's looking to bring in someone where I think she would be the first to admit, right? She needs more time. She needs a little bit of support. Like, she needs to learn the role a little bit more. And I think there's a couple teams out there right now where you'd say, okay, come in, be an assistant, focus on center forward play, focus on our attack, be a part of all the meetings, be a part of all the conversation. So she is going to be a huge addition to some team going forward. Let's talk about the big moment of the weekend. And I did previews of this. I did post reaction yesterday on the weekend, or excuse me, on Monday on the weekend recap show that I do solo, where it is the ramblings of a crazy person. But I hope you're all enjoying it, and feel free to send me more messages to get into that show and ask questions. Orlando now. We don't say two teams anymore. Orlando has set the record for the longest unbeaten streak in NWSL history. They knock off Kansas City 2-1. In the end, it's Marta's penalty kick that is the winner in this match. Just like big overall reactions for you in what this match meant, how it actually played out, and sort of what you felt coming out of it.
My first reaction is I'm kind of bummed it wasn't 11v11 for longer. That's my first reaction, because I wanted to see toe-to-toe how these two teams would play for, I would say 90 minutes, Gus, but if you've been watching NWSL, you know it's like 100, 105 minutes. 100%. Like we're getting a lot of stoppage time in these games. So I would have liked to see it be 11-11 a little bit longer. With that being said, when it was 11v11, was it a battle royale is what I would call it. It was so intense, so physical. Both of these teams scrap and fight for first and second balls like no other. And I think that was really what was on biggest display, is their ability to transition quickly and their ability to fight. 29 overall fouls in this game, including the rightful second yellow, that even if it's not a second yellow, I think it teetered on potentially a red card coming in from behind from Carrie Lawrence. So I think it was the right call in the moment. And just her second start this year, and Carrie Lawrence had a pretty good performance in her first start, gets the nod again from Seb Hines. One of the things that he has done really well is reward players for good performances, and unfortunately she puts her team at a disadvantage. But I think overall we saw what could be a match in playoffs. Like, it felt like the playoffs, and I don't know if you felt the same energy from start to finish and even post game for a playoff game.
Yeah. That was my reaction as well, and it was my reaction in that there's a lot of reasons I love watching soccer, and there are a lot of games I really enjoy. There are games where teams are flowing and you get 7 goals. There are games where one team is clearly better than the other, but the other team is hanging on and defending. I really enjoy games like that. This was a moment where you got to see the best go toe-to-toe, and it felt that way, and that intensity felt that way, and it felt like it meant more to the players on the field. It doesn't always happen in the regular season. We like to pretend it will, right? Every game matters. Every game's important. But like, this one felt different. It felt like elevated. It felt like a playoff game to me, or a championship game. And coming out of it, that was like the big moment, was the recognition from everyone clearly involved, coaches, players, that like, this is a big deal. This is a huge platform, and we want to put our best foot forward. And credit to Orlando, because even with the red card. So what's interesting to me is what I'm about to say, which is what happened, I think, with Carrie Lawrence is she wasn't aggressive 3 minutes earlier when Shwenga turns at midfield and you know, beats 3 players to get into the box and score, which was like the first moment that a player wasn't really intense and didn't win their 50-50 battle. And so then I think she overcompensated. 2 or 3 minutes later, slides in on that tackle, and I agree that it's a straight red card. But then from there on out, all 10 players left from Orlando elevated their game, and it felt like KC dropped off and said, all right, we will score eventually. And they stopped having some of the spark and the bite in the little half moments to get the advantages, to really create chances, because they didn't. They did not walk away saying, oh, if we had put one of these away, we tie or win.
And I think that is the interesting point with Kansas City, is this is a team who thrives on space. And if you take the space away from them, I mean, you could say that about a lot of teams, right? But for them in particular, they want to score how, Goss? They want to score in transition.
Yep.
They want to get you sucked in, win those first and second balls in the midfield, whether it's through good defensive positioning and biting on a pass and then going in transition and using their speed in the channels, and at times be up front, not for a while, to get at you where there's a little bit of space because the opponent has a stretched out look in their transition. I think when they don't have that, this is what they have to work on, because we saw that in this game. Orlando went down a player for the majority of this game, and they figured out a way to be in a really good defensive structure. And credit Seb Hines, because this team over the last 2 years has transformed into not just being lethal in attack with players like Adriana, Marta, Barbara Banda, but defensively, Orlando is the best team right now in NWSL. And they can do that with 11 players week in and week out, but they just show that they can do it with 10 players too against the highest scoring team in NWSL. That's the story for me, is the defense of Orlando and their ability to, as a unit, understand how to mitigate spaces and not allow Kansas City to have what they want, which is that space. So they sat in and say, Kansas City, break us down. Well, Kansas City needs to work on that if they're going to be a championship quality team, because that wasn't good enough. The chances that they created weren't quality enough for you to think, hey, they could win a championship. And I think that's the question mark for them. And even bigger a question mark for me right now, Goss, is Kansas City the juggernaut that we think they are without Bia? Because who's going to be that 10 for them when Bia isn't on the field? Because she has transformed this team. Yes, Shawinga is great, but you need to have somebody else to bring some of the attention away from Shawinga.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because of the Olympic break. We're not going to know the answer to this, which was at the beginning of the year when Bia was out, Dabinia was out. Now Dabinia's back. And so there's another element in this one. I felt like she played false nine for large stretches of this. Lavoisier a little bit deeper than her. And then you saw the rotations in there where at the beginning of the year, Shawinga was playing center forward because that was kind of the only option Vlatko had. And so we don't know what they're going to work on over the next month or so. And we'll see some of it in the Feminal tournament of like, okay, what's the options going forward for KC? Because I think you have to spend this time building the scenario in which Bia doesn't make it back for the playoffs. And like, you're hoping that's not the case, but now you've got the same foot injury. It's clearly the same thing that's been bothering her. Like, as a team, your job is to say, can we win a championship without her? And if we get her back, that's just a bonus, and then we can move from there. And so I think KC has to work on that. I would say they are still the juggernaut because I think they're just going to blow a lot of teams off the field still. Yeah. We are talking about the 1%. Like when we're talking about Orlando as the matchup, we're talking about the best. Now, Gotham, I think, is in there defensively as well. And if Gotham goes to KC for a playoff game, they will probably sit fairly deep and try and hit in transition as well. So this isn't like a one-team matchup issue. But it's what we saw with Portland last year. It's what we saw with San Diego last year. Of you're the higher seed. You're a home team in the playoffs. Teams are going to come and park the bus. Like, that's their job. Their job is to survive on the road and make it to a final. And especially with KC hosting the final, if they get all the way there, the expectation is most teams will sit in a low block. That was the question about them coming into this game. And as you said, it's still the huge question mark coming out of this one, where for Orlando, they have shown they can win games in different ways. Yeah. And that's what makes you a champion.
Exactly. And if I would look at this, I think one of the questions you were going to ask me, is this a preview of the final, right? I don't think it is, to be honest. I don't think it is because I think that there are other teams, and we've seen this in NWSL over the last 2 years, right? We have seen teams who are counted out get on a run at the end of season form. And so can I sit here and confidently say this is going to be our final? I can't. I think one of the reasons I can't is because of, we'll talk about it later, but the form of some other teams and the potential that other teams have. I might be giving a hint with attire. I think that this Kansas City team has to find a way to establish that their ability to break down a block. I think they need to, if you look at this team, I will say one suggestion. Kristen Hamilton has not played very much this season. And a part of that has been due to injury, but Kristen Hamilton is a 9. She is a hold-up 9 who can play between the lines, and you can play Dabinia at a 10. I think they need to try Kristen Hamilton at the 10 because she is a proven goal scorer in this league. She understands the intensity that you have to have game in and game out. So maybe this summer tournament will give them an opportunity to see what Hamilton can bring as a 9 with this team around her. But that's a pretty good option to have that you're not utilizing. Yeah. So for Kansas City, I think that's maybe a look that they can have.
Yeah, 100%. I thought Feist was good as well off the bench, being a little bit more aggressive in 1v1 situations infield and trying to connect and link up a little bit. I think there needs to be more attacking creativity in central midfield than what was in this game, which I thought it was fair to say, we're kind of going to set up to counter Marta and counter Orlando, and then you get the red card, the game shifts, you go down 1 goal. All of that changed as it went along, and I think then you fail to adjust a little bit maybe as quickly as you'd like. But I think that's a fair thing to want to throw out there and want to try. I asked Lori last week if Bia's out, would you not play Shawinga up top? She was in favor of leaving her on the wing where she is. Does that move the needle for you at all?
I like Shawinga in the channel. I feel like she has more space to operate in quick transition moments because she can cut inside and then use in between defenders. So I would prefer her there. And it's not engine to be able to do the defensive work and then also get the ball at half field and also score a goal. She just did that. So she can do all the things. So I would prefer to keep her there. But with that being said, I think we haven't seen enough from Dabinia this year. If Dabinia is truly Dabinia, the Dabinia we have MVP. All known for years, this is a different conversation. But she has not been that player this year. Granted, injury first game of the season, was out sometimes, but now missed the Olympics, is not going to the Olympics with Brazil. I think that was a big indication of her form right now. Yeah. So there are different moves that this Kansas City team can take, different players that can step up. But I think if you go back to Orlando, because we haven't spoke that much about Orlando, I think that they have created a system where there is understanding that everybody knows what is asked of them. In whatever position they're playing, they can morph and find spaces and utilize the intensity of Marta and give Marta a little bit more space with the work of Barbara Banda. They have found a really good, not even 11, it is the depth that they have plays every game and they contribute every game. And I think that is what you're looking at when you're looking at a team that can go far, is a team like Orlando who has shown, hey, 11v11, we can get it done if we have to. They have not given up 1 goal in the last 15 minutes of games. They have not given up 1 goal in that time, which is the hardest time to defend. So I just really like what they're doing right now, and we'll see if it continues after a little bit of a hiatus.
For anyone not watching, by the way, Jordan is wearing a Spirit hat, so that's what she was getting at as we go into this next segment when we get there. But you mentioned that depth. I think we spent a long time on the show talking about the quality of Rafaela and what she can do with her left foot and her ability on the back line. Doesn't start in a game like this. Comes in because of the red card, helps lock things down, help close things off. You look at a week ago, Adriana wins you the game in Angel City, and they were all transition goals, but they were Banda stretching the back line and Adriana reading the space then that's provided for her and taking those 2 strikes from distance, which is different than the the Utah game where Banda's stretching the field and you're playing into her feet into that space, and that's how you're attacking. And then you add Marta in on top of all of that, and you add in, I think, Summer Yates, who's been fantastic as well. Like you said, there are a lot of answers to different questions in this Orlando team. It is a very complete team. It is a team now that also I think has a little bit more time as this group compared to KC, who are really this year, and this Orlando team has talked about the way they finished last year and how they're carrying that in to this year as well. And so I think they have more familiarity in the way they play and the characters in this team and where everyone sort of fits and all of that. So it's really exciting. They looked like true champions in this match. They are, to me, the clear favorites at this point. What's really fun, though, is like now everyone makes a bunch of transfers. Everyone plays in the Olympics, and we like restart the whole thing almost at the end of this.
It's wild. One thing, I did get a question on Twitter from John Rawlings. I'm going to ask you. He said, what's your take on Orlando, the way that Orlando Pride celebrated after the win in Kansas City? Because it was intense and spirited. And I have thoughts. What do you think, Gus?
I think if you protect a lead down a player for over a full half, like that is the only reaction that I would expect. And you just knocked off the best team in the league at their building in front of their crowd. I don't know. I would love to have a camera behind Marta to see, because they showed her specifically turn and start screaming. I would love to know if she was screaming at anything in particular. That might change my mind slightly, but this is how I would have reacted, and I was super into it.
Yeah, we don't know. Was she doing that reaction towards her bench with her players right there?
Or
fans.
Or the other bench, or whatever.
Yes, I don't know. But I will just say the best leagues in the world have heroes and they have villains. And sometimes those can be the same people because other teams hate those people. And you know what? I loved it. I loved the passion. And Marta has forever oozed passion. And we have loved her for oozing passion. But when that passion is not, I guess, packaged in the way that you would like it, I think it's easy to make a story out of it. I thought it was fine, and it was the first loss for Kansas City, first loss in this beautiful stadium. It was a win for Orlando, as you said, after a really tough, hard-fought, like gladiator battle, right? It was such an intense game. I really liked the intensity, and maybe it creates a rivalry. Like, I'm all for it. I liked it a lot.
It would be awesome if that was sort of what happens, which is the second time they match up, you start to hear about some of the issues in KC, and like that's what you want, and that's what you want, especially because having done the MLS coverage I've done for so long, we like to invent rivalries really quickly, and often they are based on proximity or ownership or anything like that. When teams are good in the same span of time, like they understand what their measuring sticks are, and they understand who their competition is for trophies. And these are two teams now where it's like, you're probably looking at a 2-3 year span. It's not just going to be 1 year, even though it's really hard in NWSL to stay good. But I think you have an awareness of like, this is the team we're fighting with. This is the Shield race this year.
Yep.
It is the 2 champion favorites this year. And it is probably going to be in the conversation the next 2 or 3 years after that, especially with the way Marta is playing. Like, I mentioned it a little bit on Monday's show, but it feels like she's revitalized by the way this team plays.
Yeah, I have been so impressed by her. And it's not just the space that everybody knows you can't give Marta space. But now you have to give Marta space. You have to give Julie Doyle space. You have to give Adriana space because you're so focused on Barbara Banda. It's the Barbara Banda effect. But she covers more ground. In the game against Utah, she covered more ground. I asked Seb Hines this, cover more ground than she has in a long time. And that, to me, is like crazy because Marta is not a spring chicken.
Right.
But she does look re-energized.
It is fun. This game was worth it. This game was everything we were hoping for, but as I said on Monday, not exactly how we thought it would go. But that's the nature of big games like this. Let's talk about the other teams. Let's talk about the rest of the group. First half of the season is over. We go into this Olympic break. We've got this new tournament coming up, so we can sort of put a cap on where we're at. I think we'll do some larger award handicapping going forward. I think we'll do some larger what do teams need to do in this transfer window coming up and where do teams sit. I wanted to ask it this way. Who finished the best besides Orlando in the league in your mind, and who is in that like top competitor, that top conversation? the quote I used was Vlatko last week going to Portland said, to me, it's not a top 2, it's a top 5. And he pushed that from them down to the Thorns. I debate that. What do you make of sort of who else is left and who came in hot?
Yeah, I would actually agree with Vlatko. I think that there is a good section of teams. I think the top 2 are doing it slightly better than the rest, but I think some of these teams that we're going to talk about have found are finding their rhythm and have a greater growth for the next, I don't know, few weeks. I think specifically, let's just start with the Spirit, because I'm wearing a Spirit hat today. They sent me this, so thank you, Washington Spirit, for the gift. It feels to me, guys, what?
You're bought off. They bought you off for support.
They bought me off. Well, it's hard. When I played for them and I asked for a hat, they were like, okay, you can have a hat, Jordan.
That's fair.
I feel like this Spirit team has the most upside. It feels to me like we have seen them play under Adrian Gonzalez for the first half of the season. And we just got a taste of what they're going to be like under Jonah Heraldez. And the taste was pretty good. I really liked what we saw. And it wasn't overtly different from what we saw, but there was some massive changes. And you don't just have that. You have 3 big things coming in, which one of them is Esme Morgan, a center back, who I feel like this is not a challenged position for the Washington Spirit. There is no depth there. So now you bring in a player like Morgan with England international experience, played at Manchester City, a right center back, and can really challenge McKeown, Boutel, who have been solid, but I think can also be at times, I think you just need competition in that spot, and she will bring that. This is a team who has depth and is only going to increase their depth over this international window, which is wild to me. We just saw one of their rookies that got drafted, one of their major 5 draft picks in the was it 5? I think it was 5. Now that sounds wrong. I think
it was 5.
More than 5.
It was 4 first-round picks?
Yeah.
It was 4 first-round picks, and then, of course, they've been playing 5 or 6 of them over the course of the season.
Yeah. Well, we saw McKenna Morris, who we have not seen, and she comes in and scores a goal, draws a penalty, has an assist, and that's your depth.
Yeah.
That's your depth. And she did it so seamlessly, and I think that is what we're seeing with Orlando, what we're seeing with North Carolina, and we'll get to them in a second. But when you have a system, Gotham, you can plug and play because players understand what is asked of them, and then they can go out there, implement what you want, but also give personality. And I thought we saw that this weekend from Morris, and this Spirit side. I'm very intrigued about what we're going to see from them going forward.
Yeah, they were not the team I was going to put in here, but I agree with everything you said. And I think when you look at this team, one is if Heraldez is as good as we think and it takes any step from where it is to where it could go, that's already into the championship conversation because they're already there. Like over the first half of the season, they are a contender. They are a top 3 team in the league. What I think is going to happen with Esme Morgan is sort of to the point I think we talked about with Orlando, which is they are going to start to have more ways to win because right now they are also a very transition heavy group. Their high press, I think, is the best in the league. And so they can win in transition in and out of possession, but none of that is low block, breaking down low block stuff, where Esme Morgan is an elite ball progressing center back. And the center backs they have right now are good at getting their players out in transition and getting those first balls over. But now I think Morgan's going to be a spot where you say, if we're as good as we think and teams are coming into our building and trying to protect, we are going to step into the attacking half, and Morgan's going to start picking low blocks apart and finding those passes, whether it's to Hirschfeld or one of the front attacking 3 or 4 coming off the front line. Like, that's that next level. And I think even just from an individual point of view, as you run down the top 4 right now in the league, I think you would put Washington center backs at the bottom of that list. And now you bring in Morgan on just a pure talent play. And you increase that and you add that. So I agree with you on that. I'm fascinated to see what happens. We also haven't even talked about Lacey Santos.
I know.
That's just another. I don't know where she fits in this team, and not in like a negative way. Like, who comes out?
Yeah. Well, and then today they signed Rosemont Kouassi to a 4-year deal, who's also another attacker, a winger-like player. And I think both for Santos and Kouassi, they can be more Santos. I will say I don't know as much about Rosemont, but we'll see how she performs in this league. It is typically a left winger, likes to cut inside, utilize her right foot. But for Santos, I think she looks different than the wingers that they already have, in that she can play in the pocket in times. And so, which I think Rodman has really increased her ability, not just to be a stretching winger, but play and connect and be a linker in moments. So I think Santos helps you if you do have to break down teams a little bit more and don't have the transition that you utilize with some of the other speed on your squad. Well, but that's the difference. That's how you build a team, is you have players with different personalities that can help you. Okay, does this game call for where can we utilize these players? Are we going to find more space in between the lines in the pocket? Well, let's bring in Santos, who can play next to Bethune a little bit in a dual 10 at times, and then we have speed going forward. I just think that this is a really interesting build by Mark Krikorian and the Washington Spirit team, and they haven't missed yet. And I think we were all a little worried when they got rid of Staub and they changed things up to get all of these first-round picks, how this would work out. Well, it's working out pretty well, because they can now bring in Heraldez, you can play in a 4-3-3, you can play in a 4-4 press in moments, you can really do well defensively in the structure that you've created. I'm just excited to see what happens under Heraldez.
I completely agree with you. This is a team where I wouldn't be shocked if they won the whole thing. And I think what's scary about this, back to the convo of like the next few years, like nothing about this is going away, right? Everyone is young in this conversation. Your manager is literally one game in and is the youngest manager like in the world. Michelle Kang's going to keep investing and keep trying to push things and keep pushing things forward. And I think you look at all of this, especially these 3 signings, and you keep going back to like players want to come and play for Heraldez. They want that challenge. Audi Field sold out 2 weeks ago. So like you've got the environment, you've got the investment, you've got the vision going forward, and you've got the talent already. And like a lot of these players are only going to get better, but you've got an Olympic, roster player at left back. You've got Rodman, who's arguably the best player in the league. Bethune, who we're going to talk about probably next week in an MVP and Rookie of the Year combo. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of options. It is very exciting. But the team I was going to bring up in here was North Carolina.
Okay.
They've won 3 of their last 4, undefeated in the last 4 coming into this stretch. We think Caroline will be available because she's on the Brazil Olympic roster. That is like the big hole in this team. I like the place they found themselves at the end of this first half of the season, where Ashley Sanchez has become a goal-scoring midfielder for them. And her ability to read the game and overload in the right moments and make the line-breaking run off the ball when they are knocking it around and putting teams to sleep and all of that has added an element where if Caroline doesn't come back at an MVP level, they can still win at a really high level. And if she does, now they've got another tool in their box to say, these are different ways we can threaten you and we can create danger. They have the most cohesive style, or at least the clearest vision in the league. And I think now the results are coming with it. I've been really impressed by what they've done over the course of the last 3 weeks.
Didn't we talk about North Carolina, how they're my favorite team to watch the other week, a couple weeks ago?
My favorite team, KC is my favorite team to watch, and I'm still questioning their contender status.
Yeah, true. I love watching North Carolina, and Sean Nahas has he knows what he wants, and he has been able to translate that to this group. And I think you're spot on when you talk about Sanchez, because Ashley Sanchez is a player who thrives with freedom. You have to give her freedom, because the way she sees the game is unlike, Goss, anyone in this league. She sees it so differently. And last year when she was with the Spirit, she was pigeonholed and she didn't get to be free. And you could see the frustration in her. It wasn't translating to the score sheet. But now at North Carolina, I think she has been given freedom in attack, but she's also been given responsibility in defending moments, which has actually given her a better ability to find space when she goes forward. I am a firm believer that if you put in the defensive work, you are going to be between lines. And when you transition, you're going to have the space that you want. And when you watch Ashley Sanchez do her defensive work, that's what happens. She finds herself in a good spot, a little bit separate from defenders. She can sneak off the shoulder quickly and get in between the lines. And that's where she has been so good for North Carolina, plus a lot of other different ways. But I think that little bit of a duality, right? Defensive responsibility with offensive freedom has set her up for success. This team, North Carolina, under Sean Nahas, is, I always say, death by 1,000 passes. Well, it was nearly 600 in this last game against Louisville, and that's how much they love the ball. They are, when teams high press them, they can get out of it, but they also show that now they've found a way to put the ball in the back of the net, because I had them at the beginning of the year, and it wasn't as if they weren't getting opportunities, Goss. It was just they weren't finishing. And you think about, at some point, that final third is going to click, and it started to click for them, and now you're only going to add to that, bringing Caroline back. And I think I'm not the only one who is really excited to see the play of Sanchez, Manaka, and Caroline.
Yeah.
That's going to be really fun to watch.
And you watch this last game, I talked about a little bit on the Monday show of like, it was the 3 attacking changes at halftime that swung it for North Carolina, and Manaka, I think, reading the game in the first half and seeing the attention Sanchez is pulling. You saw that, especially I think it was the second goal, that Sanchez makes the run to her right. She shows that way. Then it's the cutback, and it's a wide open option down the left. I would throw into all of this Olivia Wingate returning from injury, gets a goal, but like head down attacking players 1v1 the entire time. This is a first round draft pick from last year that you expect to be an impact player. And that's a whole nother addition to just add to the roster at this point of the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, totally. And gives you a little taste of what, with that head down mentality. I think Tyler Lucy does that at moments too, just like can stretch. St. George does it too. But there's no one to compare to Caroline, but I think in times Wingate gave a little bit of that like Caroline aspect of like, I can stretch, I can get in behind, I can also pick up the ball and connect in between the lines. But this is going to be a different beast, a different animal when Caroline's back. We hope that the Olympics prep her really well and she has a good run up into coming back to NWSL because she's reigning MVP. She's absolutely incredible. And North Carolina is going to be really interesting with her back in this fold with a couple of different pieces that they've added over this year.
And they did enough from a results point of view to keep themselves in this conversation without an MVP, which is more than you could have asked for at this point in the season. Let's hit a few more teams. Let me mention, you said Rosemont Kouassi is official with Washington Spirit. It's a 22-year-old Ivory Coast international playing in the French First Division the last 3 seasons with, I'm just going to go for this, FC Fleury. It was 40 starts in 52 appearances, 21 goals and 8 assists over the course of that season. Oh, thank you. So that's the official news on that one. There were 2 other teams I had written down. Well, one I had written down was Chicago. I've been really impressed by them. We talked about Julia Grosso last week when it was a rumor. Now it's official that the Canadian International will be joining. What's your take on what she can add to this team? I
think it's a really good pickup for Chicago, because when you look at them, it feels like they need an 8. I think at times Grosso can be a 10, a player who can help them in the midfield, because they have Recaro, they have Nesbitt, but it feels like they still haven't quite found the way that they can utilize their midfield to their best ability. Because we talked about it with other teams, but Chicago's transition, it's through Jenna Bike, it's through Penelope Hawking, and it's number one through Mallory Swanson. So if you can add some good central midfielders to this group, maybe you establish a little bit more possession, and you can allow your outside backs to get forward, like a Natalie Cuica. You can allow Julia Grosso to get into the box at moments with a late run and add a little bit more connection between the midfield and the front line. I think it's a good pickup for them, and in an area where they needed it, because I think they have good players across the front line and they're solid in the back. This feels like it could be set up really well for Grosso if she can transition quickly to NWSL, because we have seen that has been a challenge for other players, especially this year with the intensity of this league coming from foreign leagues.
Yep, I agree. I echo everything you said. I'm curious if there's a world in which you slide Nesbitt out wide, quote unquote, and you play Grosso as the 10, because it just adds another player on the field who's comfortable in possession, who can help you control the game. You probably lose a little bit of 1v1 threat down those wings. But, like, can you progress this team? This is a team right now that, on their day, can defend really strongly and find Swanson in transition. What's the next step under Lauren Donaldson? Like, where do you go from there? And that's where I think a setup like that gets you more ball players on the field.
And just with you saying that, Goss, what if you, like, maybe even a 4-4-2 diamond could work well with some of the players that they have. If you play Nesbitt as one of the outside players, Grosso as Hawking as the 10, Grosso as the other outside player, you can shift at times into more of a box, have stability but good ball playing players, and still the threat up top of a player like Swanson. So I think that there is a lot more possibilities now with Grosso and getting players on the field who work together and look like there is a little bit more cohesion between the lines for this Red Stars team.
One of the other teams that was in this conversation that Vlatko brought up, that top 5 in that group, was the Portland Thorns, and they officially signed Mackenzie Arnold earlier today. 30-year-old Australian international, full-time starter at the international level since the last Olympics. Of course, was starting for West Ham up until this moment when she decided to leave and signed with the Portland Thorns. This is a huge move for a big name, especially at this point of the season. I question the Thorns of this group the most, and obviously in firing their own manager and having an interim, they question themselves as well. How big of a difference does this one addition make, though?
Huge. I think it makes a big difference. Mackenzie Arnold has proven at the international level, at a World Cup, that she is an elite goalkeeper. And so now you bring her in fit and ready to go. This is a spot where I think Portland didn't have the depth that they thought they had with Bella Bixby going on maternity leave, not international duty. So you bring in a player like Arnold, and I think some of the goals will start dissipating when you talk about goals against for this Thorns team. And she's comfortable with her feet, and she can play out of the back. So I think it gives you an up level, and credit to Hogan, because this is the hardest position to jump into and be successful right away as a player in this league. And that's why we see not a lot of second place or 1.5, as Saskia Weber likes to call them, second goalkeepers get time in this league, because it's difficult to break in. But I think she gained so much experience, and now will continue to have her level raised with Arnold in training. Will Arnold get the starting spot right away? I have no idea. That's not my decision. But I know that both of these goalkeepers will continue to get better, because now the training is going to be better and they're going to be challenged day in and day out. And that's only a positive for the Portland Thorns, who need to be a little bit more compact and stingy defensively, because they haven't been that this year, which has been I think, shocking to everybody.
The deal's through 2026 with an option for 2027. So it'll be interesting when Bixby comes back. But that's a good problem to have, as you said. Like, to have depth at that position is massive for your team and massive for what you can do going forward. Portland have given up 20 goals so far this year. Take KC out, who play their own style. It is by far the worst number in this convo we're talking about of like who are the top 5 to 7, who are the contenders. It is a clear step behind. So if you can clean some of that up, it puts you back into this conversation. And I think over the course of now this layoff for the break, I think you can find ways to get the attack flowing a little bit more. I think Smith needs to be more involved and more central, but there's a lot of different levers that you can pull to get yourself there. And Portland, a good performance this weekend as well to sort of close things out for them. And I think positive over the course of that time. We haven't mentioned Gotham yet. I think everyone kind of knows the story with Gotham. A lot of it's on health and waiting for that. But at the same time, I think it's the best defense in the league by itself. You've got Rose Lavelle in the attack and Crystal Dunn and hopefully Esther and Lynn Williams going forward. Any big thoughts on them who got another win this weekend before we move on to some news?
Yeah, Gotham is absolutely in this category of teams that ended on a really good way in this first half of the season. I think we're only going to see them be more dynamic. They found something really good with Ella Stevens, who I think shocked a lot of people with her ability to seamlessly fit into this Gotham team, because she is a lot more creative than I think we would have given her credit for. She is lethal in the box and has really found a good connection with Rose Lavelle. And if you're a number 9, that's who you want to have a good connection with, is Rose Lavelle. So, I think you said most of it. Good defensively. They have the best goalkeeper in the league who can change a game in a moment, not only with her saves off the line, but her distribution is, oh my gosh, brilliant. It is something to watch. I just want like a highlight reel of Anne-Katrine Berger's distribution, because it's beautiful. So, Gotham is in this, and we probably could go a whole show just talking about them, but they're in the mix.
Yeah, luckily we've got a few shows coming up now to sort of recap what we've seen so far and set the stage going forward. So reminder, we are here every Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern time, live to watch on your podcasts. I am doing the weekend recaps on Mondays. Obviously, we'll be less NWSL heavy over the next few weeks with no games until we get into the Feminal tournament. So send me all your questions about these teams and what's going on. Would love to dig into it more when we don't have the games to recap as we go forward. Let's talk about it. One last big signing. This happened right after we came on last week, but Mina Tanaka, 30-year-old Japanese, full international, one of the stars of the Japanese league, 4-time Golden Boot winner at the center forward position. 74 caps, 30 goals, scored in the World Cup last year, will be at the Olympics again for Japan, signs with the Utah Royals. This just feels like a shot in the arm for a team that is struggling. What do you make of this addition and the timing of it?
I think the timing is good for Utah. They did get a draw right at the end of the season, or the first half of the season before the international break. So good for them to get that draw. But I think for Utah, this is a perfect signing, with a grain of salt, because we don't know how Utah is going to play under their interim manager. We don't really know. But Tanaka, I was so excited to see that she is going to be in NWSL.
I think we may have lost Jordan there. She said she was very excited about Tanaka joining NWSL, and that may have been too much excitement as we go forward. So hopefully she will rejoin us in just a moment. Shout out to Henry in the chat, Colin as well, and RG Loss for hanging out with us and talking all things NWSL. We are very excited to do this. We are very excited for this show. And I'm just going to vamp for a moment while we wait for Jordan to come back with us. The exact stats on Tanaka: scored 37 goals in the most recent season. won those 4 golden boots from 2016 all the way straight through to 2019, and then played on loan in Germany in 2020. Hey, Jordan, your excitement for Tanaka was palpable.
Wow. The internet even knew. Like, it was like, we're done. We're not talking about it anymore. Yeah, I don't know. Do you want me to keep going about her or finish what I
Yeah, you can finish.
was saying? I love Tanaka because for Utah, this is a player who they have really struggled to hold on to the ball. And Tanaka thrives under pressure with the ball at her feet, connecting the lines, is so skilled and technically proficient that she is only going to up-level this squad. I feel like it's going to give them the outlet they need to allow Setnor to thrive, and she's already finding herself the best player on this Utah team. A player like Tanaka is going to highlight Setnor, and actually they're more connected. I would like Utah to still get a midfielder, but what did I say? They need a 10 and they need a 9, and we got one of them.
And I don't think we've seen Henry really settle and like be the force for this team she can be because the trade came late and things are moving around. It feels like coming out of the international break, the spine of this team is almost, or if not complete, because you already made the upgrade at center back, right? You already have Del Fava in this group. Now you've slid Setnor inside, which maybe isn't her best spot, but she is the best player on this team and has made a difference at that 10 position. And now you've added that center forward. So in the space of 3 months, you have completely flipped that spine and turned it into one that can compete week in and week out. I think the comments coming out of Amy Rodriguez being let go was like, we are trying to use these 6 months to set ourselves up for next year. So you're probably not going to rush and make a drastic move. And I do think also with some of the moves we're talking about of like who fits into the Washington team, who fits into the Gotham starting lineup. If I'm this Utah group, I sit with this squad for the rest of this year. I compete. And then I say, who's available? Like, who can we go out and find as an attacking piece that fits what we're building and not just like a pure talent play to get better? And I think there's going to be some options at 10 and wing position from some of these other teams, if not going overseas as well, that could be really appealing for this group.
Yeah, that's a really good thought, Goss, and I like that. Staying within the league and finding players who have free agency, and you could bring them over and be a key piece in this group. But I go back to the game 2 games ago where Utah played Portland, and they were by far the better team. And this was Amy Rodriguez's last game. Yeah. If you insert a player like Tanaka in that game, you're scoring goals.
Right. Yes.
You're easily
all of the game. Chances you created,
and
especially the pullbacks at the end line.
Yes. And that is, if that's the Utah that we see moving forward, I'm excited to watch that because this league has thrived over the years on top to bottom, first team in the standings, last team in the standings. Everybody has a chance. And if Utah plays like they did against Portland in that game, Utah's going to have a chance of getting some points in the second half of the season, especially with a striker like Tanaka coming in and upping their level. Yeah,
absolutely. So big move for Utah going forward. I think we're going to do something going forward. What else? What other moves would we like to see for some of the teams down at the bottom of this league to try and improve? Because as you said, you'd like to see competitive games overall. Let's hit a piece of news here, and one that we don't have a full story on yet, so we're not going to dig in too deep. But coming out right as we recorded last week was a message from Brittany Alvarado, a former video and creative manager at the San Diego Wave, who put up a post on Twitter. And if you haven't seen it, or X, you can go look at it and search her name. But saying that her work conditions at San Diego were bad for her mental health, didn't bring in a lot of what the Sally Yates investigation has done and the guidelines that it's created, and that it was a hostile work environment, and it was one that was because of the leadership of Jill Ellis. So I would encourage you to go read that. It was terrible to hear, and you heard some other former employees also speak up as well after this came out, saying, I had experiences myself that were really frustrating or challenge my mental health in this group. Jill Ellis then put out a statement to the Associated Press, I believe, denying the allegations and saying that the club has even brought in third parties to investigate them or to sort of give reviews of their work process and the way things are going. And then that's kind of where it sits right now, as the NWSL said, we take all allegations seriously and we're going to launch an investigation. So we don't know a ton more. I think we can all say that we don't want anyone to ever be in a situation like this, and it's really disheartening to hear. And we will sort of follow this story as it goes along and continue to bring you news on it here at Soccerwise going forward throughout this season. And then we can close on a little bit of U.S. women's national team talk as well, because we've got a game coming up on Saturday. The send-off series has begun. It's the 25th anniversary of the World Cup victory in 1999. So the 99ers are going to be in the building. You're going to be in the building as well?
I am, Goss. You going to be there?
I am going to be there. I had to pay. I think you get paid. I had to pay to be there.
Yeah. It's a pretty nice deal I got, huh?
So let's go back to 99. Let's talk about sort of what this celebration is and what you make of the opportunity to be in this space with all of these legendary players who changed the course of the sport in this country.
Oh, when you said that, I haven't thought about that in particular. And that makes me really emotional, because they really changed my life. I remember sitting at a regional tournament in 1999. I had just turned 13. I barely played on my club team, and I watched those women on the TV playing in the World Cup. And I remember the thought in my brain, I want to do that. I want to be on the national team. I want to play for my country. And that inspired my dream, and they inspired not just me, but I think you could ask anybody that plays in the league right now, most people that were alive, because some of them weren't alive, can look back on 1999 and see how it transformed this country and how those women made a really big impact with the World Cup on our home soil, and they won it in a really dramatic fashion. So I hope I get to say thank you to them, and I hope we all get to celebrate them, because there was celebrating. They really played inspired. They played for each other. It really was like the epitome of a team, and playing for your country with such pride, and Saskia Weber with her hair dyed in the colors of red, white, and blue, and Julie Foudy documenting everything on her camcorder. Like, there's so many things that pop up that I just feel like they loved representing this country and winning that World Cup at a really peak time in what is women's sports in the United States. So gosh, it's going to be so cool. And did you see Nike just dropped throwback jerseys of the 99ers? So you can now buy a 99 World Cup themed jersey with me looking like Mia Hamm. So I might have to get one of those.
Yeah, I might have to as well, although I assume these things are as heavy as possible for a soccer jersey when you think back to what stuff was like back then. So it may not do me so well in some of these environments, but it's awesome to hear your memories of that and sort of where it brought you, because I think that's the beauty of sports, right, is it can inspire us and push us into the world in special ways. Like, sports are silly in the end. We all know that, but it can change the world as well. And this team's the essence of that. And you talk about them playing as a team, like that's the case with, 5 or 10 of the greatest players of all time being in the same group, but playing as a stable unit. And I think it's a pretty cool full circle moment to have this in a soccer specific stadium where like that was unimaginable in 1999. And the ability for this team to sell out stadiums, to be the main picture and the main show, and like some positive stuff happened in 94, but what happened in 99, I think sets the sport off in this country, not just in women's soccer, in soccer in general. And now we're going to host the Men's World Cup. We think we're going to host another Women's World Cup coming up. And like to do it in this building where Gotham plays week in and week out, and then help send off a team that is so different from the one that they were, but also expectations and talent on the highest level. And I think it's exciting to see. It feels like right now the U.S. is back into a place of pushing the sport forward while also respecting and being proud of what has happened in the past and the legacy of this team. It's one of the heaviest jerseys to carry in the world for these players. We're watching Copa America and Euros right now, and you look at what it feels like for an Mbappe and a Vinicius and all of that, and you know what it feels like for the young Brazilian players trying to follow Marta and the speech she has given to them and what they are trying to do. We know what it feels like for France to try and create history in France and try and do it for a second time in a 5-year span at home. These women set that legacy for the U.S., and it continues to carry on. It's going to be electric in that building. It is, I think, the best atmosphere in the country when it's full, and it's never full, and that's another problem we can talk about on another day. But when this building is filled, it bounces, and it is going to be electric on Saturday for this one.
Yep. All right. Fill it up, people. Fill it up.
Anything from a soccer point of view that you're focused on or you really want to see, or it's send off and it's still kind of feeling things out?
No, I think I'm excited to see this group and what Emma Hayes is asking of them, because I can imagine it's a lot, and it will be interesting to see what we notice from maybe the last games in Colorado and Minnesota to these games where it feels like you should have ramped up, right? And you should be ramping up. I don't think anything specific comes to mind, but with that front line, I think everybody's hoping for some goals.
Yeah. I think that's like the one takeaway that everyone comes to is like, let's see a fully healthy Swanson on the front three with Rodman, with Smith, whether it's Macario or Dunn or whoever else, or Lavelle. I think, 5 Gotham players on this team that could get a chance to play in their home stadium in this one. Like, open it up, let it rip, because I think you want to go into the Olympics with that belief and confidence of, like, we're flowing, we're scoring goals. You can feel a difference with a team when the wind's at their back and everything feels easier and you're aggressor. And I think last World Cup, we didn't see that. There's a lot of reasons for that. We've all rehashed it a million times. A big one was just the lack of having Swanson and like having that true elite finisher who can change the game and take some of the pressure off your shoulders. I want to keep seeing that so that you go and you hit the ground running against Zambia and say, like, this is what we're doing now. So it's exciting. I haven't seen this team in person in a very long time, so I'm very excited to be there. I'm excited to celebrate you and watch you as well. And I'm glad we could do this. We're back together after a week off. So no more vacations ever. Just kidding. We have plenty more coming up as we go along. Shout out to everyone watching with us live. Shout out to everyone watching in post on podcast, wherever you are. Don't forget to subscribe to our Discord or to our Patreon if you want to. So go search Soccerwise on Patreon. You can find it linked off our Instagram and our Twitter handle as well. And you can subscribe. You can become a supporter for us. You get into the Discord. You can chat. NWSL, U.S. Women's National Team, we have its own channel for that as well. As we go through, we're planning some stuff for the Olympics to help cover this team, as well as the Canadian team as they try and repeat as gold medalists here. Both of those teams heavily geared out of NWSL talent in North America. But it was really fun. It was good to talk. We have now this break coming up, so we've got some time to do some more stuff. So if there's anything you really want us to talk about, bigger picture, get into that Discord and send it to us, because I think this is a time for us to sort to explore a little bit and debate some different ideas of, we've already talked a lot off air of like, where is this league going? Where does this league compare? I mean, the Mackenzie Arnold news, like, you scroll through the comments and it's a lot of like, NWSL is past WSL now, or NWSL is the best league in the world. Is it, is it not? You talked about the adjustment period for some players. Like, there's some cool stuff that we can talk about, and we've got some time to do it now, which feels very rare in a moment where it feels like it's game after game after game every time we come on here. So thank you once again to all of you for watching. Thank you to our producer, Charlie Cheesesteak, Elliot Fiction, for being a part of this as well. And thank you to you, Jordan, and thank you to all of our listeners. And we will be back very, very soon to talk to you again next time.